My name's Mark and you're listening to Headstraight. Hello you lot and welcome back. Today we're looking at how you can build a life that actually feels like yours. Now you've made it here. You've worked through the noise. You've started setting boundaries. You've stepped back from things that were pulling you all over the place. And maybe for the first time in a while, you've now got this bit of space. Now, not everything is sorted, but it's quieter, a bit steadier. And when things get quiet like this, something else tends to show up. A different kind of question. Not how do I fix this? Not how do I get through this? The question's more like, what am I actually doing with my life? Because when you're not constantly reacting, you start to notice things. What you're doing that doesn't quite fit. What you've been going along with without really choosing it. What looks right on the outside but doesn't feel right on the inside. And this is the point where most people get stuck. Because no one really shows you how to build something that feels like yours. You get told how to succeed. You get shown what good life looks like. You get handed expectations, timelines and checklists. But no one really asks, does any of this actually fit for you? So you end up doing what makes sense on paper. You follow the path. You tick the box. You keep things moving. And yet something feels slightly off. Not so much wrong, but just not quite yours. And that's what this episode is about. Not starting over, not blowing your life up and rebuilding it from scratch, but looking at what you've already got and asking, does this actually fit me? Because the goal here isn't a perfect life. It's a life that feels like yours. Now, this is the part that most people don't quite realise. A lot of what you're building was never really chosen by you. It was picked up from what you were shown, what you were told, what seemed to make sense at the time. You get given this idea of how life should go. Do well in school, pick something sensible, get a job, stay on track, keep moving forwards. Now, none of this is wrong, but it doesn't ask you the very important question. Is this actually what you want? Because when you don't stop and ask that, well, you just kind of keep going. You make decisions that sound right, things that sound good when you explain them to other people, things that get approval. And at first that works. You feel like you're doing okay, like you're on track, like you're heading somewhere. But over time, something starts to feel off. Not because you're failing, but because you're following something that was never really yours. And this is where it gets tricky, because it doesn't feel like a big mistake. It feels subtle, like you're slightly out of place in your own life. You can be doing well and still feel disconnected. You can be moving forwards and still feel unsure why you're doing it. It's like you've been moving forwards this whole time, putting the effort in, doing what makes sense, keeping things going, and then something clicks. Now, not in a massively dramatic way, just a quiet realisation. I don't actually know if this is what I want. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because no one really showed you how to stop and choose your direction in the first place. So you follow what's visible, what other people are doing, what looks successful, what feels safe. And before you know it, you're living something that makes sense on paper, but doesn't fully land with you. And this is the part that most people struggle to admit, because everything might look fine from the outside. You're functioning, you're coping, you're doing what you're supposed to do. But inside, there's a quiet question sitting there. Is this actually it? And that question doesn't mean that you're ungrateful. It doesn't mean that you're failing. It just means that you're starting to notice the difference between what you've been given and what actually fits you. And once you start noticing this, you kind of can't really unsee it. That sense that something doesn't quite fit. Now, it's not in a dramatic way. It's just in those small moments when you're doing something that looks right, but doesn't feel right. When you're going along with things, but not really connecting with them. And this is where most people get confused, because nothing's obviously wrong. You're not falling apart. You're not completely stuck. You're not failing, but you're not fully in it either. And that can be a really strange place to be, because it's hard to explain. From the outside, everything looks fine. But internally, there's this bit of distance. You go through your day, you do what needs to be done, you keep things moving. But it can feel like you're slightly disconnected from it. Like you're in your own life, but you're not fully part of it. And over time, that starts to wear on you. Not in a really loud way, but in a quiet, steady way. You start questioning things more. Why am I doing this? Is this actually going anywhere? Does this even matter to me? And if you don't address it, you end up doing one of two things. You either keep going anyway and push the feeling down, or you start pulling back from things without really knowing what it is that you're moving towards instead. And neither of those feel great, because one keeps you stuck and the other leaves you drifting. And this is the point where people often think, yeah, I need to change everything. But that's not actually what's needed here, because this isn't about blowing your life up. It's about understanding something important. That feeling isn't a sign that you've failed. It's a sign that you've outgrown something that you never fully fitted in the first place. And once you see it like that, then that changes how you respond. You stop trying to force yourself to fit right in it, and you start asking yourself a better question. What would actually fit me better than this? So let's look at the shift. You don't need to rebuild your whole life. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need everything figured out. What you need is something that fits you better. Because most people think that the answer is to go and find the right life. But that's not how this works. There isn't one perfect version of life waiting for you out there somewhere. There's just what fits you and what doesn't. And the more your life lines up with what actually matters to you, the more stable it starts to feel. Now, not easier, but just more solid. Because when things fit, you don't have to force it as much. You don't have to constantly question it. You don't have to keep proving to yourself that it's right. And this is where things start to simplify. Instead of asking, is this good enough? Does this look right? Will this work long term? You start asking, does this actually fit me? And that question changes everything, because it brings you back to something that's yours, not what's expected, not what looks impressive, not what everyone else is doing, but what actually matters to you. And this is the part where people overcomplicate things. They think that they need a big vision, a full plan, a clear path, something locked in. But you don't. You just need a direction that feels right, something that lines up, even if it's small. Because your life isn't built in big decisions. It's built in patterns. How you spend your time, what you give your energy to, what you keep saying yes to. And if those patterns fit you, then your life starts to feel like yours. Not all at once, but in a slow, gradual way. And that's the point. This isn't about creating a perfect life. It's about adjusting what's already there so that it fits you better. So if this is the shift, what actually helps you to do it? Not in theory, but in real life. Well, the first thing is this. Get clear on what actually matters to you. Not what should matter, not what looks good. What actually matters. Because if you don't define that, Everything else ends up deciding it for you. Now, this doesn't need to be deep or complicated. Just ask yourself, what makes me feel like I'm actually living, not just getting through things? It might be having time to think, feeling calm, being creative, feeling connected to people, or having some independence. Now, the answer to that question is just a starting point. Not a full plan, just a clearer sense of what matters. And the second thing is this. Look at your day, not your future, your day. Because your life isn't something that happens later. It's what your day looks like right now. So ask, does my day actually reflect what matters to me? Because if your days don't line up with what matters, your life won't feel like yours. So this might be small, creating a bit of space in your day, changing how you spend an hour, doing something because you want to, not because you should. Nothing dramatic, just more intentional. And the third thing is this. Start questioning what you're doing out of habit or expectation. Because a lot of what keeps people stuck isn't big decisions. It's the small things that they never question. I should be doing this. This is just how it is. Everyone else is doing this. And some of those things will stay, but some of them won't. And even dropping one or two of the things that don't actually fit you can make your life feel noticeably different. Because this isn't about changing everything. It's about removing what isn't yours and strengthening what is. And when you start doing that, your life doesn't suddenly become perfect, but it does start to feel more like you're in it rather than just going through it. So, if you take nothing else away from this episode, I want you to take this. You don't need to build a perfect life. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need a full plan. You don't need to get it right all at once. What you need is something that feels like yours. And that doesn't come from big decisions. It comes from the small ones. What you say yes to, what you say no to, what you keep doing and what you start letting go of. Because your life isn't something you arrive at. It's something that you shape day by day. And just to let you know, you're already doing that, even if it doesn't feel like it. Every time you pause and question something, every time you choose something that actually fits you, every time you stop going along with something that doesn't, you're building something that's yours. Not perfectly, but deliberately. And that's enough. So here's something maybe to try over the next week. Pick one small change that makes your life feel more like yours. Not something impressive, something honest. Something that lines up even just a little bit more with who you actually are. And stick with it. Because that's how this works. Not in big shifts. In small ones that you actually keep. And if you followed this season through, then you've already done more than you think. You've stepped back from things. You've questioned things. You've started noticing things. And that really matters because most people don't get that far. So as we close this season, I just want you to take a second. Look at where you were and where you are now. Not in terms of outcomes, but in how you think, how you respond, what you notice, what you're starting to choose. Because that's where the change actually is. And it doesn't need to stop here. This isn't an ending. It's just the point where you start doing this for yourself without needing it explained to you. So let me leave you with this. You don't need to build a life that looks right, just one that feels like yours. In the last and final episode of this season, we're going to take a look back at all of the work that you've done. Because believe me, you've done a lot. So, are you up for it? Of course you are.